This morning, we're here with James Lovett, CEO of Myoderm. And James, you're an interesting story because you came to the life sciences as an attorney. Your background was an attorney, and you found your way into the life sciences. Love to hear more about that story.
That's right, Joe. First of all, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here with you today and talk a little bit about Myoderm. I did begin life as an attorney, and if you had told me when I finished law school that I'd end up CEO of a clinical trial supply company supporting the life science community, I would have said, not a chance. So it just shows how your life can evolve and go in directions you never expect. So came out of law school, worked at a law firm in Washington, and ultimately moved to Chicago for personal reasons, but also I wanted to have more business-oriented clients rather than kind of government-oriented practice that you have in Washington. That ultimately led to me becoming a in-house counsel, general counsel of a company called Covance, which was a public contract research organization, CRO. So we supported clinical trials, really ran clinical trials and other aspects of drug development across the spectrum from preclinical to phase 4. And that was a great education for me on, how life science and drug development works, and ultimately led me to Myoderm.
Yeah. So you guys successfully sold Covance, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about your thought process and decision making at that point in terms of what was next.
So that's right. We sold Covance to LabCorp in 2015 for just a little over $6 billion. And at that point, I had been at Covance for 14 years. And the last 7 or 8 of those years, I had kind of evolved to where I was still the general counsel of the company, but that was about half my time. And the other half my time, I ran in succession 3 different business units at Covance. And so I was kind of half-time law, half-time running businesses, and I actually loved that mix. I had a chance to stay on at LabCorp in what would have been a business role, but the role was primarily in North Carolina, and I just decided that I didn't want to move, and it was time to try something different. And for a while as an independent consultant, and actually kind of recreated that half-time law, half-time business mix. I had one client that I was a general counsel for, and then I had a series of clients that I did basically strategy consulting projects for.
So what caused you to give up the gig? What took you to Myoderm?
When I started the gig of independent consulting, it was a way to stay busy and earn some money while I did my search. But as I kind of built the consulting practice and it became a full-time thing, I kind of came to the view of, you know what, I don't really need to get a real job. I could do this the rest of my career. I'm really enjoying it. And I've recreated this half law, half business thing that I enjoyed, which I didn't think it'd be possible. But when I got approached about joining Myoderm at that time as the COO, I just thought it was too interesting an opportunity to pass up to help run an independent company with exciting growth prospects that would be supporting the life science community. And I just thought it'd be really cool.
So you've really, on the life sciences side, you've had a career that's been all about running clinical trials and supporting clinical trials. And I think there's so much behind the scenes that we don't understand that goes into advancing drug development through clinical trials and creating cures for patients. Let's dive into Myoderm and the services you provide and how you guys actually support the clinical trial process.
Thank you, Joe. You make a great point. The clinical trials are an incredibly complex organism. You're trying to run something that is ultimately operating in multiple countries at the same time. Could have anywhere from a few dozen to literally thousands of patients participating in it with different doctors in different locations, potentially speaking different languages, different regulatory regimes for sure. And there's a very important science component. That's ultimately what this is about. I'm frankly not a scientist. And what I've learned is there's also a huge backroom component of making all this work from a logistical perspective. So at Myoderm, what we do is we do the supplies part. So imagine you're running a clinical trial, especially in the modern era where half of clinical trials are in oncology and a lot of the rest are in different kinds of rare diseases. These are very serious diseases. You're not comparing the drug that's being tested to a placebo. That'd be incredibly dangerous to somebody with cancer and frankly would never be approved. Instead, you're using the existing standard of care drug as a comparator so that the patient's getting some kind of treatment, either the existing standard of care or the new experimental treatment, no matter which arm of the study they're in. And Myoderm's historic core is providing those comparators, sourcing those, and then providing those to be used in the study. From there, we've expanded into a whole series of new services, including direct-to-site distribution, secondary packaging and labeling, clinical trial equipment and supplies. And this spring, we just launched our newest service, which is a clinical trial prescription card. We call it CTRX, that allows patients to get drugs that they need, whether comparators or rescue medications, at the local pharmacy or the site to do that for them, instead of having to source it centrally. That's really powerful for decentralized and direct-to-patient studies that we're starting to see with COVID-19.
James, it makes so much sense to me that you would have diversified your service offering. And what it makes me curious about how the companies going into clinical trials find you. What's the network? How do they discover you and the important role you can play for the process?
So we've been doing this for 30 years. And we grew out of an existing business that's actually more than 80 years old and has been privately family controlled the whole time. I'm actually the first non-family member to be the CEO. So we have a very good reputation in this space. Pretty much everyone in big pharma has worked with us on and off for years, and a lot of other small and medium as well. So in a lot of cases, people don't have to find us, they already know us. Of course, we also have a sales and marketing team. And we try to reach out and proactive reach out to customers, especially in small and medium pharma, which is a particular focus for us. We think we have because of that years of experience, we have a lot of expertise about how to handle these logistical challenges that happen in clinical trials. That if you're, a scientist who's become the chief medical officer or head of development at a startup biotech, you're used to thinking about the science of your drug and how you're going to prove it's safe and effective. We can handle these logistical backroom things that are important to make the clinical trial success and bring expertise to make that successful. So we make sure our BD people are really focused. Not that big pharma is not important, they are, but big emphasis on reaching out to small and medium pharma and startup biotech.
James, do you see continued innovation as you expand the line of services that you offer to your clients?
Absolutely. I see really two kinds of innovation. First, there's an incredibly exciting amount of innovation going on in the scientific community for new drugs. And I actually do a little bit on the charitable side in my spare time, but you think about cell and gene therapy, you think about the developments in immuno-oncology and new things on the horizon. That's really exciting. There's also a lot of innovation happening in clinical trial supply in terms of logistics, like the new service I talked about in terms of launching the CTRX card. That's a new way to provide comparators for clinical trials that's particularly well suited to patients doing studies remotely, which is itself an innovation in how clinical trials are done. Instead of a patient going into a big medical center, which obviously has become a lot more risky with COVID-19, they can have a nurse visit them at their house and do maybe not the entire study, but most of the visits without having to go to the investigator site to run the study.
That's terrific. Well, you mentioned your charitable activity. Let's pivot for a second and talk about some of the charitable and advisory work that you do. You're a trustee at the Wistar Institute, and certainly this has been a great period for the expansion of Wistar. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, it's been really exciting to be involved in Wistar. And I know you've had Heather Steinman, the head of licensing and tech transfer at Wistar, on this show. Wistar does basic research focused on oncology and immunology and vaccines. And they are, first, historically incredibly important. They did the research that led to the rabies vaccine and the rotavirus vaccine. They were the science behind what became the launch of Synacor, which is the biggest component of J&J Pharmaceuticals, the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. Their science was behind the creation of Stelara. And right now, their science is behind one of the leading COVID-19 vaccine candidates, and they are really pushing the boundaries of knowledge in immuno-oncology and immunology generally. So it's just an exciting place to be. For me personally, I've spent the last 20 years in drug development. So once you've discovered something, how do you develop it and bring it forward? So it's been a tremendous education for me about how the drug actually gets discovered. And then to try to help them think about, as they discover things, how they develop it. So it's an amazing place, and it's a very vibrant part of the Philadelphia research scene that's, leading to Silicon Valley, as you hear talk about. And, we've got a budding biotech community here in Philly that I think is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited that you bring that up. So what do you see the trajectory? Do you see Philadelphia showing up as a solid number 3 in the life science clusters, with San Francisco and Boston perhaps 1 and 2, or do we just take it right to the top?
Well, I'd like to see us take it right to the top, Joe. I don't think either one of us has spent our life aspiring to be number 3.
I agree with you.
So we've got some room to go to catch them. However, I think what's happening in Philly right now is incredibly exciting, starting with the basic research at places like Wistar, I mentioned. Penn is obviously an amazing institution. Other places in the city like Jeff, Fox Chase, etc. A lot of great stuff happening here from the science perspective. And there's an increasing community of life science entrepreneurs who are launching a lot of biotechs. The success of Spark Therapeutics, I think, has really galvanized the community. I think Chris Molino is doing a really good job at Life Science PA to help galvanize that. And a lot of really good things happening here in life sciences in Philly. And it will take a long time to catch Bay Area and Boston, to be real. But I think it's possible. I think we can do that.
Well, that's terrific. It's been great talking with you, a widely ranging conversation, and a great opportunity to get a look behind the scenes on what happens and what makes clinical trials go well. James, thank you so much for your time. We're really excited about all that you're doing, and congratulations on the advancements at Myoderm that are at your direction.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's great talking with you.